All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast STS preview series. My name's Nick. I'm your host from the Clemson podcast, joined tonight by Alex Kraft, senior writer over at Shaken the Southland. Alex, how you doing?
Doing great, doing great. Happy Friday. Tomorrow's game day.
Absolutely. Feels like it's actually been a longer stretch on downtime since the BC game leading up to this one, at least for me. So can't wait to see them spot the ball tomorrow.
Yeah, it's almost like a bit of a hangover we have to shake off from last week. Watching it live, I was just as frustrated as everyone. But once I went back and rewatched it, I was a lot more satisfied, a lot happier with the play calling for one, and really, especially how the offensive line performed run blocking. Defense, of course, no complaints at all. I think their one touchdown came on a short field. So I feel a lot better now for Virginia Tech than I did at about 5 o'clock last Saturday.
Yeah, it really enjoyed reading your video recap of the first half, and then Matt handled the prolific fourth quarter for us. So that was a good video breakdown you guys did, and definitely got me over the initial emotion coming out of that game.
For me as well, I figure out a lot as I'm going through that. I would go in with one takeaway from the game, and then it completely changed, as I'm reviewing it. So got everyone to back away from the ledge from a bit, hopefully, regarding the play calling.
Yeah, we appreciate that. But let's turn our attention here to the Hokies. Clemson heads into Blacksburg with the number 2 ranking. Virginia Tech, they're number 12. So this will be our third top 15 matchup of the year. I think, across the landscape of the country, you got to give it to Clemson in terms of playing tough opponents so far this year. I think that will help Clemson, stand up to a Hokies team here. Both teams 4-0. And we came off a tight one last year in the ACC title game against these same Hokies. But obviously both teams have sustained some turnover, predominantly on both sides on offense. What do you think, if anything, translates from that game or, that matchup last year to this one?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when I think back to that game is it was closer than it should have been once Clemson lost Dorian O'Daniel and Jalen Williams went in for him at Sam linebacker. They picked on him pretty consistently throughout the night. And, O'Daniel, we lost him on a targeting penalty, on the first or second drive of the game. And eventually, they just realized they could attack Williams. He's a great player, don't get me wrong, but he's not O'Daniel. I think O'Daniel is the most important player on the defense this year. He doesn't get quite the publicity that the guys up front do, but who's the most versatile guy on the field? Who's the guy we have to leave out there pretty much every snap just because he can do whatever we want him to? It's O'Daniel. And presuming he stays on the field for 4 quarters, I like Clemson's chances. In addition, to consider when you consider what Virginia Tech lost on offense, definitely think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Virginia Tech's going to attack defensively similar to how Auburn did, but I don't think they'll be quite as successful because they don't have the talent up front that Auburn has. And, their secondary is good, but they don't play press man quite as well as Auburn does. So similar game plan, I think, from Clemson. Attacking downfield is going to be paramount to get them to back off the line a bit. And hopefully that'll open things up for the run game at some point. Their defensive line isn't particularly deep. So even if the run isn't working early, hey, just keep running combo blocks behind Hearn and Falcinelli because that was working against BC from the start last week. It's just they were feeling really well at the second level and keeping, potential 20, 30-yard gains into the 4 and 5 range.
Yeah, for sure. I think the lone test on this Virginia Tech schedule this year has come against West Virginia, and they struggled on offense in the first half, figured it out in the second half. But I also think you saw West Virginia wear down the Virginia Tech defense, and that turned into a much higher scoring and competitive game late. Clemson, presumably more athletic and talented than West Virginia, can get there. Mm-hmm. And I guess in terms of Virginia Tech's defensive game plan against Clemson, let me ask you, if you're Bud Foster, what specifically about Kelly Bryant's game would you look to game plan against, maybe to expose weaknesses or limit his upside? What do you think needs to be their priority?
I think the priority is confusing him and getting to him. One, because BC showed they can really confuse him. BC is a man coverage team. Last week they showed almost exclusively cover 4. And it wasn't like a soft cover 4 like Louisville where they just waited for Clemson to attack and still got burned anyway. They played a more aggressive cover 4 like what Venables does, like what Foster does against spread teams normally. And I think they're definitely going to try and get to Kelly Bryant with a lot of blitzes, mostly man blitzes where they'll stack the line. They'll have their nickel, Mook Reynolds is almost always in position to blitz. People think of Tyrann Mathieu, that honey badger from LSU, what was it, 5 years ago, who was always blitzing from the nickel position.
Yep.
Virginia Tech does that with him all the time. They've always got him lined up tight. And often they'll bring their strong safety down into a rover position where he's pretty much on the line of scrimmage too. So that shows an 8-man front right there. Even though it's technically a 4-2-5, you don't think of a 4-2-5 as being an 8-man front, but theirs is. And they are going to really try and confuse Bryant before the snap and get pressure on him, because he's shown, especially last week, that if his first read isn't there, I don't want to say he panics, but he's either holding on to the ball too long in an effort to go through progressions and then takes a sack, or he's taking off immediately. So if they get to Bryant, I saw a stat from David Hale from ESPN that said on whenever Bryant's pressured, I think 30 or 40% of that time he's taking a sack, whereas last year with Watson, he would get away from he would only take a sack 10% of the time when pressure wasn't on him. So Bryant's a better runner, better at moving downfield, even maybe better at escaping in terms of just raw athletic ability, but he doesn't have that pocket presence yet. And Foster is going to come after him and make Kelly Bryant beat them. So that's why I say, hey, throw it deep early. Kane's not going to be double covered because they don't have two high safeties. They keep one deep because they like to have 8 men up front. So Kane's going to have more opportunities tomorrow than he will at any point for the rest of the year. Boston College, even in cover 4, they were still shading that weak safety to him every single time. And I would have liked to see a tight end on the boundary side, on Kane's side, attack that quarter to make the safety pick, doubling up on Kane or, defending this tight end.
Yeah. I think you threw a clip in there from last year's game where Jordan Leggett also exposed them over the middle. And that's something we have not seen. I mean, Mylan Richard step back from Leggett, certainly, but, through the middle or in the flats, that can be an area ideally that we would like to expose, or at least make them respect.
That tip was actually taking advantage of cover 4. And, everyone thinks of as Foster as a man coverage guy. But when he's playing against a spread passing team, he throws in more cover 4 than you would think. And that play call, the play action where Leggett essentially runs a seam, the strong safety who has that quarter, that middle left side quarter, came down on the play action. Leggett's running right at him, so he assumes Leggett's blocking.
Yeah.
Leggett just misses him. Deshaun pulls back and throws. No one within 15 yards. That's the sort of play that Clemson needs to hit tomorrow night.
Elsewise, maybe taking a look back at the season to date and looking ahead, what aspects do you feel like, first of all, the OCs, are they doing what they need to put Kelly Bryant in a position to, progress, and succeed? And maybe as a second part of that question, if not, what specific areas do you think they need to develop? You mentioned pocket presence as one. Are there ways that coaching and play calling can tee that up for progress? Yeah,
they can certainly call plays to protect him, and I think they have. If nothing else, Tony Ellett is great at taking what is given. Like I said, many people were frustrated with the conservative play calling last week, just inside zone read all the time. Now, Bryant missed a lot of reads on the zone read. He kept a few times he shouldn't have. But the inside run with a double team on the defensive tackle was working all day. And once it was clear the screens were not being thrown well or being blocked well out wide, they threw them out. They said, whatever, we're just going to run because it's working. They tried a few rollout passes after that just to, get Bryant moving. He's more comfortable moving, of course. He's what he's best at. So I think we'll see a lot of that. Bud Foster will counter by probably blitzing into off the edge from Bryant's right side to keep those rollouts from happening, force him back into the pocket where, backside pressure will come in. But the good news is I don't think Virginia Tech will be able to generate much pressure with a 4-man rush. Their defensive line is not particularly athletic. They certainly lack for size, and they're really not as athletic as you would expect for being somewhat undersized. The exception is Tim Settle, the nose tackle. He is a mammoth of a man. No Dexter Lawrence, of course. But, some may remember that Clemson recruited Settle, gosh, I think it was a few years ago at least, but backed off, not because of character so much as work ethic. He's not in shape. He maxes out at 40 snaps a game. So he will play less than half the game at best for Virginia Tech. And that's not a deep run. So that's encouraging for the run game right there, which, if Clemson can run, no one can beat them, because if you don't need to make Bryant pass, okay, that's fine. We'll just run it all day.
We'll take it. Yeah. That was something I wanted to ask you about, was generally conditioning. And we saw it in last year's ACC championship game. Virginia Tech was able to keep in that game. And by the end, Clemson players were huffing and puffing quite a lot, especially on the defensive side. I think as a result of sustaining drives by targeting Williams. But we could flip that, right? Especially in terms of their defense. And yes, they turn over some guys on their D line, but I'm not so sure they have the depth this year that they did last year. And I think that is not just tempo, but sustaining drives on the Clemson side is going to be key to tiring them out.
Yeah, especially that defensive line is very thin. If your nose guard can only pull 40 snaps, that's not very good against a
85 snap team.
Yeah, if Clemson gets to 80 snaps, that's the goal. I'd like to see a lot more than that. Of course, there are a lot of variables. You never know how many snaps Virginia Tech will run, although they run hard too. So you can count on a high snap count, I think, for both sides. Hopefully more for us, of course. I really think the run game will open up at some point, just because they're thin up front. Clemson's not the deepest up front either, but they're dominant at the front, at the first level. Yeah. So that's why I think even if the run isn't working early, we still need to do it, still need to attack it. But I want to see those deep shots to Deon Cain frequently, because he's never going to be matched up 1-on-1 as often as he's going to be Saturday. Everyone is shading over him. This week there were a lot of headlines about, Cain's numbers are down. He was supposed to step up, be the ringleader for wide receiver U or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But he's double covered, and
nearly still caught one last week through double coverage. So I think he's hungry for a big game, and this could be it. Unfortunately, he had a touchdown called back against Louisville that was certainly not called a chop block or a hold?
They were offsetting penalties. Offsetting. Mm-hmm. They called a face mask on Milan Richard, which I never actually saw the face mask. So
definitely not. There. Well, before we pivot to kind of predictions, how we think this one will go ultimately, can you talk to us about Josh Jackson? Anything we should know about him?
Yeah, he's a bit ahead of schedule. He's overachieved, truly. He's a good quarterback. He's a redshirt freshman. And Justin Fuente has proven to be great with quarterbacks. It's a roster comprised mostly of 3 stars, but this isn't like Louisville where there's less than stellar coaching. This is Virginia Tech. We've got Bud Foster on one side, who's been there for 30-something years, and on the other is one of the youngest and brightest offensive minds. So he's going to coach up his 3 stars. So I think he's thrown, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. And, of course, the competition has been horrible. I mean, if your best opponent faced is West Virginia, I'd be concerned.
And they have a Florida retread in a quarterback there. Yeah.
Big 12 teams aren't known for their defense either. And goodness, speaking of which, I think West Virginia, an air raid team in West Virginia, put up 200 yards on the ground on Virginia Tech. So that certainly bodes well. I think Virginia Tech will, of course, defend Clemson differently than they did West Virginia. They'll focus more on stopping the run, but that just opens up the pass for Deon Cain. So Clemson's got so many different ways to attack. And if Bryant is just set up for success through play calling, which I fully expect that to be a continuing trend, because the coaching staff has somewhat not protected him, but they brought him along by playing to his strengths. So it's important for Clemson to stay ahead with the run game, hit the deep shots if they're there. Bryant's been pretty accurate when throwing outside. He really has been. It's ironically or surprisingly the short stuff where he's had the most trouble. Those screen passes, throwing straight into the back of his blockers. So those deep shots to Cain, if it's one-on-one, Bryant has shown that he will just put it up there and let his guys win. Because man-to-man is easy for him to diagnose. It's like, okay, that guy has Deon. All right. When it's zone, especially zone he doesn't expect, like from Boston College, all of a sudden he's seeing 3 guys and he's got to throw into a tight window. And he's like, oh, no, I can't do that. And then, he's either sacked or running. So I think because of that, Virginia Tech probably will show a bit more cover 4. But they're still going to send a lot of pressure after him. And we're going to see a lot of just not prayers to Deon, but we need to see a lot of bombs to Deon.
Yeah, and in terms of coverage or protection over the top, Virginia Tech will be without their key leader at safety, Divine Diablo, and then Adonis Alexander, who's one of their better cornerbacks, looks like will suit up for this game. He's been out for a disciplinary issue. No telling if there'll be rust there or what his mentality will be coming into this game. So I would give a little bit of personnel edge, to Clemson's offense here, certainly with the absence of Diablo at safety. But those are kind of the pertinent who's going to be suiting up, I guess, nuggets for this game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Alex, take us through predictions for this one.
Ooh. All right.
Score and how you see the game unfolding.
Yeah. Well, the key is going to be surviving an early surge from Virginia Tech. If Clemson can weather that like they did against Louisville, then that takes the crowd out of it. Of course, Tech has a much better crowd and better coaching staff than Louisville does. I really think it's going to be relatively low scoring. I predict 28-17. I don't think Virginia Tech will come anywhere close to 20 points unless they get help on defense or special teams. And Clemson, if they can hit the passes early to Deion, the downfield shots are going to be open, because who can separate better than Deion Kane? I don't think anyone in the country can. And then from there, it's staying patient with the run. And I think Clemson will put up 28 points. I'm not going to count on anyone on Clemson making a field goal without Greg. You know, he's a fellow Blythewood alumnus, so we got to give a shout out to Greg Hugel. Mm-hmm.
Yep, pour one out.
Yeah, exactly. So not counting on any field goals. So I'm going to say only 28 points instead of 31, 34, and Virginia Tech 17.
Yeah, Clemson's defense is averaging just over 9 points a game. Mm-hmm. Look at opponents, et cetera, there. But yeah, I agree with you. I think if we do find ourselves in that low-scoring game and Clemson's offense is not able to succeed, Josh Jackson is a guy that can beat you or at least give his team a good shot. But my prediction for this was 27-17. I'm penciling in maybe a missed PAT in there. But
there you go. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Unfortunately.
We had one last week, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. At home, no less. But yeah, Tiger victory. Spread, I think, is hovering around that touchdown mark, maybe 7.5. But I share your low scoring assessment. Cool, Alex. Thank you so much for tuning in or for joining us. Hopefully, we get some good uptake on this video. For all of our followers, you can read what Alex's thoughts are on shakingthesouthland.com. Alex, what's your Twitter handle?
Ooh, it is not Alex Kraft. It's called Hiding in Plain Sight.
Got it. So you're out there constantly tweeting. Are you going to be watching the game at home tomorrow?
I will, yeah. I'm visiting my parents for the weekend in Blythewood, Columbia, just outside of Columbia. So, just taking the rare chance to come visit them because, so many home games are coming up to my neck of the woods. So. Yep.
October is pretty much chock full, right?
Oh, yeah. It's the one for that until Thanksgiving for me to come visit them.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. We will get you back on here probably ahead of Florida State. We'll see. We'll get you back.
Florida State, South Carolina. I've got a lot of hate for South Carolina, given where I grew up. So that'll be fun.
Oh, yeah. We might have to do an ensemble cast for that one.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, I like that even better. We'll get. Bring in Ryan, bring in Matt, maybe John, because John's funny.
Yeah, definitely. Well, good stuff, dude. Thank you so much, and go Tigers.
Yeah, go Tigers.